In the picturesque town of Pinecrest, nestled between the rolling Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, life moved at a gentle rhythm, guided by the constant sound of rushing streams and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee that wafted from the most beloved cafe in the region. Mountain Brew, owned and operated by Emma Thompson, stood as the beating heart of the small town, drawing locals and occasional tourists alike with its warm atmosphere and exceptional coffee. Emma, with her chestnut hair often tied in a messy bun and emerald eyes that sparkled with determination, had inherited the cafe from her grandmother 5 years ago. At 32, she had poured her entire being into preserving her family's legacy, carefully selecting only the finest coffee beans, perfecting brewing techniques, and creating an environment where everyone felt at home. The wooden beams that crisscrossed the ceiling, the collection of vintage coffee grinders displayed on rustic shelves, and the handwritten chalkboard menu all reflected Emma's attention to detail and deep connection to her roots. Despite the smile she wore while serving her customers and the genuine care she showed to each person who walked through her door, Emma carried a quiet yearning in her heart. Beyond the cafe's large windows lay mountains that had framed her entire existence, boundaries she had never crossed. Her dreams of exploring the world beyond Pinecrest remained just that, dreams tucked away safely behind her responsibilities to the business and the community that depended on her. "How your usual today, Mr. Wilson?" Emma asked, already reaching for the dark roast beans as the elderly man nodded with appreciation. The morning rush was predictable, comforting in its familiarity. Principal Davis would come in for her vanilla latte at 7:15 sharp. The teachers from the local high school would arrive in waves between 7:30 and 8 house. The routine was reliable, unchanging, until it wasn't. The brass bell above the door chimed at 9:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in early October, and with it came a shift in the cafe's atmosphere. A tall figure stepped inside, immediately drawing every eye in the room. The stranger stood over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders accentuated by an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that whispered of wealth and refinement. His olive skin, strong jawline, and perfectly trimmed dark beard framed features that seemed more suited to the pages of a luxury magazine than the rustic interior of Mountain Brew. Emma felt an unexpected flutter in her chest as his deep brown, eyes intense and observant, scanned the room before settling on her. There was something in his gaze, a weight, a complexity, that made her momentarily forget the coffee she was pouring, nearly causing it to overflow. "Careful there," her assistant barista, Lily, whispered with a knowing smile, nudging Emma's elbow. The stranger approached the counter with confident strides, his presence commanding the space around him in a way Emma had never witnessed before. His movements were deliberate, precise, as if each step had been carefully calculated. "Good morning," he greeted, his voice a rich baritone with the faintest hint of an accent Emma couldn't quite place. "I'm new to town and was told this is where I'll find the best coffee in the state." "Welcome to Mountain Brew," Emma replied, straightening her apron and offering a professional smile. "Whoever told you that wasn't exaggerating. What can I get for you today?" The man studied the menu board for a moment, then returned his gaze to Emma. "I'd like to be surprised. What would you recommend? Something that captures the essence of this place." The request was unusual enough to pique Emma's interest. Most new customers played it safe with familiar orders. "How do you feel about bold flavors?" she asked, already formulating the perfect introduction to her cafe's offerings. "I embrace them," he answered with a small smile that transformed his serious demeanor, creating a dimple in his left cheek. Emma nodded, turning to the espresso machine with renewed focus. She selected beans from a small batch roast she had personally developed, a blend of Ethiopian and Colombian varieties that balanced intensity with complex notes of dark chocolate and blackberry. With practiced movements, she prepared a drink. That wasn't on the regular menu, a specialty she reserved for those who showed genuine appreciation for the craft. "Here you go," she said, placing the steaming cup before him. "A double ristretto with a touch of our house-made vanilla and cardamom syrup, topped with a thin layer of steamed cream. We call it the Blue Ridge Fog." The stranger raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. He reached for the cup, his fingers briefly brushing against hers, a momentary contact that sent an unexpected warmth up Emma's arm. He took a careful sip, closing his eyes as he savored the flavor. When he opened them again, there was genuine appreciation in his gaze. "This is exceptional," he said, the sincerity in his voice causing Emma's cheeks to warm slightly. "I've had coffee in 38 countries, and this easily ranks among the best." 38 countries? Emma couldn't help but ask, curiosity overriding her usual professional distance. "That's quite the coffee tour." "More business than pleasure, unfortunately," he replied, taking another appreciative sip. "Though moments like this make me reconsider that balance." He extended his hand across the counter. "I'm Nathan Reed." "Emma Thompson," she responded, accepting his handshake. His grip was firm but not overpowering, his palm warm against hers. "What brings you to our little corner of nowhere, Mr. Reed?" "Nathan, please," he corrected with a smile. "Let's just say I needed a change of scenery. Somewhere quiet, somewhere real." There was something in the way he emphasized the word real that suggested layers of meaning beneath the simple statement. Nathan selected a table by the large bay window overlooking the town square, its wrought iron fence and central gazebo visible from his vantage point. Emma found herself glancing in his direction more often than necessary as she served other customers. He alternated between checking his phone, which she noticed was a model she had only seen in advertisements, and observing the town's unhurried rhythm with contemplative interest. "He's certainly not your typical hiker passing through," Lily whispered as they restocked the pastry display. "That watch alone probably costs more than my car." "Don't be ridiculous," Emma chided, though she had noticed the gleam of what appeared to be a very high-end timepiece on his wrist. "He's just another customer." Yet as the days passed, Nathan became far more than just another customer. He returned to Mountain Brew each morning, always at the same time, always taking the same table by the window. He ordered the Blue Ridge Fog without fail, sometimes requesting slight variations that showed a developing palate and growing comfort with Emma. On his 5th consecutive visit, Nathan arrived wearing more casual attire, dark jeans and a light blue button-down shirt that somehow looked just as expensive as his suits had been. The change made him appear more approachable, though no less out of place in the small-town setting. "May I ask you something, Emma?" he inquired as she delivered his coffee. "Of course," she replied, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "What made you decide to stay here, in Pinecrest?" The question was asked with genuine curiosity, not judgment. Emma considered her answer carefully. "This cafe is more than just a business to me. It's my grandmother's legacy, my family's heart, the mountains, these people, their home." She paused, then added with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "Not everyone gets to travel to 38 countries." Nathan nodded slowly, his gaze thoughtful. "Home is a privilege many don't recognize until they lose it," he said cryptically. Before Emma could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed. The caller ID briefly flashed on the screen, Alexander, accompanied by a foreign flag emoji that Emma didn't recognize. Nathan's expression shifted subtly, a tightness appearing around his eyes as he excused himself and stepped outside to take the call. Through the window, Emma could see his posture transform, becoming more rigid, more formal, as he spoke with barely controlled intensity into the phone. When he returned, something had changed. The relaxed demeanor had vanished, replaced by a palpable tension that followed him like a shadow. His smile seemed forced as he left a generous tip and departed earlier than usual, promising to return the next day. Emma watched him go, his tall figure moving with purpose toward the luxury SUV parked down the street. For the first time, she noticed a second vehicle discreetly positioned nearby, inside which sat a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit who nodded respectfully to Nathan before starting the engine. Who exactly is Nathan Reed? Emma wondered aloud, the mysterious stranger having carved out a place in her thoughts in just under a week. Little did she know, Nathan Reed wasn't even his real name. By the end of October, Nathan had become a fixture at Mountain Brew. His presence no longer caused heads to turn, though the air of mystery surrounding him had only deepened. Emma found herself increasingly drawn to the enigmatic stranger, who seemed both perfectly at ease in her cafe and entirely out of place in Pinecrest. On a particularly busy Saturday morning, Emma struggled to keep up with the weekend rush. The espresso machine was acting temperamental. One of her part-time baristas had called in sick, and a tour bus had unexpectedly stopped in town, filling the cafe beyond capacity. "Let me help," Nathan offered, appearing suddenly behind the counter, rolling up the sleeves of his cashmere sweater. "Customers aren't allowed back here," Emma protested weakly, even as she frantically tried to manage 3 orders simultaneously. "I've worked in hospitality before," he said with a confident smile that suggested he was stretching the truth. "Just tell me what to do." Against her better judgment, Emma directed him to the sink filled with dirty dishes. To her surprise, Nathan dove into the task without hesitation, tackling the mountain of cups and saucers with unexpected efficiency. His movements were awkward at first, as if dishwashing was a novel experience, but he adapted quickly, his focus unwavering. "You're full of surprises, Mr. Reed," Emma remarked during a brief lull, handing him a clean towel to dry his hands. "Somehow I didn't picture you as the dishwashing type." "There's a lot you don't know about me," he replied, his tone light but his eyes serious. "For instance, I make terrible coffee, but I'm quite good at carrying heavy things." As if to prove his point, he moved toward the storage room where a delivery of coffee beans had just arrived. Emma watched in amazement as Nathan effortlessly hoisted the heavy burlap sacks, carrying them 2 at a time, to the designated storage area. The physical labor seemed to energize him, bringing a genuine smile to his face. "You seem to be enjoying this," Emma observed as they worked side by side, organizing the inventory. "There's something satisfying about tangible work," Nathan admitted, wiping sweat from his brow. "Creating something real, seeing immediate results. It's refreshing." "As opposed to what you usually do?" Emma probed gently. Nathan hesitated, his expression guarded. "My usual work is abstract. Numbers, negotiations, endless meetings about hypothetical scenarios." He shrugged, but Emma sensed there was much more he wasn't saying. Later that afternoon, as the cafe quieted down, Nathan remained, attempting to learn the basics of espresso making under Emma's guidance. His initial attempts were disastrous. Beans ground too fine, water too hot, milk scorched beyond saving. "How is this so difficult?" he groaned after producing yet another undrinkable concoction. "I've mastered quantum physics, but I can't make a simple latte." Emma laughed, stepping closer to adjust his technique. "Quantum physics, huh? Is that what they teach in business school these days?" Nathan tensed momentarily, as if catching himself in a slip. "Just an exaggeration," he recovered smoothly. "But seriously, this is humbling." "Coffee is an art form," Emma explained, standing behind him and guiding his hands through the proper motions. "It requires patience, presence, and practice." She was acutely aware of their proximity, of the subtle cologne that clung to his skin, notes of cedar and bergamot that suggested luxury without ostentation. Their hands moved together over the portafilter, fingers brushing as she demonstrated the proper tamping pressure. The moment lingered, charged with something neither was prepared to acknowledge. Emma stepped back first, clearing her throat and tucking loose strands of hair behind her ear, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. "You'll get there," she assured him, creating necessary distance. "It took me years to perfect my technique." "How did you learn?" Nathan asked, seemingly grateful for the shift in conversation. Emma's expression softened as memories surfaced. "My grandmother taught me everything I know. She opened this place in 1983, when specialty coffee wasn't even a thing in small towns like this. Everyone thought she was crazy, importing beans from around the world when most people here were perfectly happy with diner coffee." "She sounds like a visionary," Nathan remarked, his admiration genuine. "She was," Emma agreed, running her hand along the worn wooden counter. "She used to say that a good cup of coffee could build bridges between cultures, that it was a universal language everyone could understand." She paused, lost in thought. "I always wanted to follow in her footsteps, not just running the cafe, but traveling to the source, meeting the farmers who grow our beans, establishing direct trade relationships. Why haven't you?" Nathan's question was gentle but direct. Emma sighed, her shoulders dropping slightly. Life gets complicated. When Grandma got sick, I came back from college to help run the place. After she passed, it felt wrong to leave. The cafe needed me. The community needed me. She forced a smile. Dreams change, I guess. Do they change? Or do we just convince ourselves they have to? Nathan's words hung in the air between them, unexpectedly profound. Before Emma could respond, the cafe's door swung open, admitting a group of tourists speaking rapidly in Arabic. Nathan's head snapped up at the sound, his body language instantly alert. The newcomers paused mid-conversation when they spotted Nathan, their expressions cycling rapidly from surprise to uncertainty to careful neutrality. One of the men, distinguished by his expensive watch and authoritative bearing, gave Nathan a slight nod of acknowledgement, a gesture that seemed loaded with unspoken meaning. Nathan returned it stiffly before abruptly excusing himself, claiming he needed to make an important call. Emma served the tourists, catching fragments of their hushed conversation despite her limited knowledge of Arabic. One phrase kept recurring, accompanied by furtive glances toward the door through which Nathan had disappeared. Al-Amir Nadim. When Nathan returned nearly 30 minutes later, he was pale and distracted. He apologized for his absence, explaining vaguely that a work situation required his attention. "Is everything okay?" Emma asked, concerned by his altered demeanor. "Just some unavoidable responsibilities catching up with me," he replied, attempting a reassuring smile that didn't reach his eyes. He glanced at his watch, a different one today, she noticed, less ostentatious than his usual timepiece. "I should go. Thank you for the coffee lessons." As he turned to leave, Emma made an impulsive decision. "We're having a harvest festival in the town square tomorrow evening. Nothing fancy, just local music, food vendors, that sort of thing. You should come." Nathan paused, conflict evident in his expression. "I'm not sure I'll be able to make it." "Just think about it," Emma said, trying to keep her tone casual despite her inexplicable disappointment. After he left, Emma's curiosity got the better of her. She approached the table where the Arabic-speaking tourists were finishing their coffees. "I hope everything was to your satisfaction," she said politely, gathering their empty cups. "Excellent coffee," the distinguished man replied in accented English. "You have a charming establishment." "Thank you," Emma smiled. "I couldn't help but notice you seemed to recognize my friend." The man exchanged glances with his companions. "Your friend?" "The tall gentleman you nodded to earlier." "Ah," the man said carefully. "He resembles someone we know from home. A case of mistaken identity, perhaps." Emma wasn't convinced. "And where is home for you?" "Kuwait," the man answered after a brief hesitation that suggested it might not be the whole truth. He quickly changed the subject, asking about local attractions before leaving a generous tip and departing with his companions. That evening, as Emma closed the cafe, curiosity drove her to her laptop. She typed Al-Amir Nadim into the search engine. The results made her breath catch in her throat. Al-Amir Nadim bin Faisal Al-Sayed, the first result read, "The reclusive crown prince of the wealthy Gulf nation of Johara has once again cancelled public appearances, citing ongoing trade negotiations." The accompanying photograph showed a man in traditional royal attire, surrounded by dignitaries at a formal event. Though partially obscured by a headdress, the strong jawline, intense eyes, and the distinctive dimple in his left cheek were unmistakable. Nathan Reed was crown, Prince Nadim bin Faisal Al-Sayed, heir to the throne of Jauhara. Emma stared at the screen in disbelief, pieces falling into place. His refined manners, his obvious wealth, his vague descriptions of his work, the security details she had occasionally glimpsed. Why would a crown prince be hiding in a small town in North Carolina, washing dishes in her cafe? Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "I'll be at the festival tomorrow. Save me a dance." And Emma's heart raced as she stared at her phone, then back at the royal photograph on her screen. The man she was growing increasingly attracted to had been living a double life. The question was, which version was real? The crown prince, burdened with responsibilities, or Nathan Reed, the mysterious stranger who washed dishes and failed at making lattes? As she shut down her computer, Emma resolved to find out the truth, one way or another, at tomorrow's festival. The Pinecrest Harvest Festival transformed the town square into a kaleidoscope of autumn colors. Strings of golden lights crisscrossed overhead, swaying gently in the cool evening breeze. Local vendors lined the perimeter, offering everything, from apple cider donuts to handcrafted jewelry, while a stage had been erected near the central gazebo for local musicians. Emma had spent the entire day in a state of nervous anticipation, vacillating between excitement at seeing Nathan again and apprehension about confronting him with her discovery. She had changed outfits 3 times before settling on a burgundy sweater dress with boots, casual enough for the small-town event but nicer than her usual cafe attire. "You look amazing," Lily commented as they set up the Mountain Brew booth, where they would be serving specialty coffee drinks throughout the evening. "Hot date with Mr. Mysterious?" "He's not my date," Emma protested automatically, though her carefully applied makeup and the extra attention she'd given her hair suggested otherwise, and he probably won't even show up. But at precisely 7:30, as the local bluegrass band took the stage, Nathan appeared at the edge of the square. He was dressed more casually than Emma had ever seen him, in dark jeans and a charcoal Henley beneath a well-worn leather jacket. Without his usual tailored suits, he looked almost like he could belong in Pinecrest, except for the unmistakable air of refinement that clung to him like a second skin. Their eyes met across the crowded square, and Emma felt a jolt of recognition pass between them. Nathan smiled, that genuine, dimpled smile that transformed his serious features, and made his way toward her booth, navigating through clusters of townspeople who had no idea they were in the presence of royalty. "You came," Emma said when he reached her, suddenly uncertain how to act around him now that she knew the truth. "I promised I would," Nathan replied, his voice warm. He glanced at the busy booth. "Looks like you could use a hand. Need an amateur?" "Barista." Despite her conflicted feelings, Emma couldn't help but smile. "I'm not sure the good people of Pinecrest are ready for your coffee experiments." "Fair point," he conceded with a laugh. "How about I just handle the cash register then? Numbers I can manage." For the next hour, they worked side by side in the booth, falling into an easy rhythm that belied the secrets between them. Nathan proved surprisingly adept at charming the customers, many of whom were clearly curious about the handsome stranger assisting their local coffee shop owner. As the evening progressed and the rush at their booth slowed, Mayor Jenkins took the stage to announce the beginning of the traditional harvest dance. The band struck up a lively tune, and couples began gathering in the center of the square. "I believe I was promised a dance," Nathan said, extending his hand to Emma. She hesitated only briefly before accepting, allowing him to lead her away from the booth and into the swirl of dancers. His hand at the small of her back was steady, his movements confident as he guided her through steps that were considerably more refined than the casual swaying of the other townspeople. "You dance well," Emma observed, using the opportunity to study his face up close, searching for signs of the prince beneath the facade of Nathan Reed. "Years of formal training," he admitted, then caught himself. "Ballroom dancing classes in prep school." "Is that where princes go?" Emma asked quietly, feeling him tense beneath her hands. "To prep school?" Nathan missed a step, his rhythm faltering momentarily as his eyes widened in surprise. "Emma." "Al-Amir Nadim bin Faisal al-Sayed," she continued, keeping her voice low enough that only he could hear. "Crown Prince of Jahara. Did I pronounce that correctly?" Nathan, or rather Nadim, guided her to the edge of the dance floor, away from curious ears. His expression had shifted to one of guarded wariness. "How did you find out? Those tourists yesterday weren't just random visitors, were they?" Emma crossed her arms protectively across her chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Would you have treated me the same if you'd known?" he challenged, his voice tinged with a bitterness that suggested this wasn't the first time he'd faced this situation. "Would I have been washing dishes and failing at making lattes if you knew I was a crown prince?" Emma had no immediate answer for that. Would she have behaved differently? Almost certainly. "I came to Pinecrest to escape, just for a little while," Nadim continued, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that seemed too vulnerable. too human for the royal figure she had read about online. "My father is ill. When he paused, choosing his words carefully. "When he's no longer able to rule, I'll be expected to take the throne. My entire life will belong to Jauhara. So this is what, your last taste of freedom?" Emma felt a strange pang in her chest at the thought. "Something like that," he acknowledged. "I've spent my entire life being Nadim the prince, Nadim the diplomat, Nadim the future king, never just Nadim the person, until I came here, until I met you." The vulnerability in his confession caught Emma off guard. She had expected defensiveness, perhaps even arrogance, but not this raw honesty. "Alexander, my chief of staff, arranged everything," Nadim explained, gesturing vaguely to indicate his temporary life in Pinecrest. "He found this place, far from the usual haunts of the international elite. We created the Nathan Reed identity, and I was supposed to stay anonymous, keep to myself, just decompress for a few weeks." A rueful smile played at his lips. "Then I walked into your cafe and decided to play normal person?" Emma couldn't keep the edge from her voice, the hurt, but being deceived bleeding through. "No," Nadim said firmly, reaching for her hand, which she reluctantly allowed him to take. "I decided to be myself for the first time in my life, the real me without the weight of a nation on my shoulders, and the real me. He's drawn to you, Emma, to your passion, your dedication, your authenticity." The band had shifted to a slower melody, the melancholic notes of a fiddle weaving through the night air. Around them, couples swayed in each other's arms, oblivious to the royal revelation unfolding in their midst. "Dance with me," Nadim requested softly. "Please, before you decide I'm not worth the trouble." Against her better judgment, Emma stepped back into his arms. They moved together slowly, the space between them charged with unspoken tension. "How much longer?" she finally asked, her cheek resting against his shoulder. 2 days, he answered, his voice tight with regret. "Alexander has been calling constantly. The official story is that I've been in intensive trade negotiations in Europe, but that excuse won't hold much longer. There's a state dinner next week that I cannot miss." 2 days, Emma repeated, the words hollow in her throat. And then, Crown Prince Nadim returns to his palace and Nathan Reed, what, ceases to exist? "He doesn't have to," Nadim said, pulling back slightly to look into her eyes. "Not completely." Before Emma could ask what he meant, a commotion at the edge of the square interrupted their conversation. A sleek black SUV had pulled up, and from it emerged a man in a crisp suit who surveyed the festival with barely concealed impatience. When his gaze landed on Nadim, he strode purposefully in their direction. "Your Highness," the man said in a low, urgent tone when he reached them, giving a slight bow. "I apologize for the intrusion, but there's been a development. Your father is requesting your immediate return." Emma felt Nadim go rigid beside her, his expression shifting to one she hadn't seen before, regal, commanding, every inch the crown prince. "Alexander, this is hardly the appropriate venue for—" "It's the trade agreement with the Americans," Alexander interrupted, his voice still hushed but insistent. "The terms have changed. Your father needs you to review the new provisions before he proceeds." A flicker of conflict passed over Nadim's features before the princely mask slipped firmly into place. "I'll be there momentarily," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Alexander nodded, glancing briefly at Emma with undisguised curiosity, before retreating to a respectful distance. "I have to go," Nadim said, turning back to Emma, the warmth returning to his eyes. "But this isn't how our evening ends. I promise you that." Before she could respond, he leaned forward and pressed a soft, brief kiss to her lips, a gesture so unexpected that Emma had no time to react before he was pulling away, walking toward the waiting SUV with the confident strides of a man accustomed to command. Emma stood frozen in place, her fingertips touching her lips where the warmth of his kiss lingered. Around her, the festival continued, music playing, people laughing, life proceeding as if the world hadn't just tilted on its axis. "Was that—" Lily appeared at her side, eyes wide with disbelief as she watched the SUV pull away. "Did Nathan just get whisked away by some kind of security detail?" It's complicated, Emma replied, still dazed. Honey, men like that are always complicated, Lily said sagely. Question is he worth it? Emma had no answer. She mechanically returned to the booth, going through the motions of serving customers while her mind raced with questions. What had Nadim meant when he said Nathan Reed didn't have to cease existing? Was he suggesting some kind of continued connection? And how could that possibly work when their worlds were literally continents apart? As the festival wound down and they began packing up the booth, Emma's phone chimed with a message. It was from Nadim. Meet me at the cafe at midnight, please. Midnight found Emma sitting alone in the darkened cafe, illuminated only by the soft glow of the string lights she kept on overnight. She had changed into jeans and a sweater, removing the makeup that had been carefully applied for the festival. If this was to be their goodbye, she wanted him to see the real her. No pretenses, no illusions. Precisely at midnight, a soft knock came at the door. When Emma opened it, Nadim stood there once again in the elegant suit that marked him as someone apart from the everyday world of Pinecrest. Behind him, the black SUV waited, engine running. I don't have much time, he said without preamble, stepping inside. The Royal Jet is fueled and waiting at the regional airport. Then why are you here? Emma asked, keeping a careful distance between them. Because I couldn't leave without telling you the truth, Nadim replied, his eyes intense. In the dim light. Not just about who I am, but about how I feel. He took a step closer, and Emma found herself unable to back away. These past weeks have been the most real of my entire life, he continued, his voice low and fervent. For the first time, someone saw me, not my title, not my wealth, just me. And what I discovered is that when I'm with you, I like who I am. Nadim, Emma began, but he gently placed a finger against her lips. Let me finish, please. In 2 months, there's an International Coffee Growers Summit in Geneva. Representatives from all major coffee-producing regions will be there. Jahara has recently invested heavily in sustainable coffee cultivation. He took a deep breath. As Crown Prince, I'll be attending. As the owner of a respected independent cafe, you have every reason to be there too. Emma's heart began to race as she understood what he was suggesting. You want me to come to Geneva? I want you to pursue your grandmother's dream of connecting directly with growers, Nadim clarified. And yes, I want to see you again, away from both our worlds, on neutral ground. No pretenses, no expectations. Just Emma and Nadim, finding out if what we've started here is real or just a beautiful illusion. The proposal hung in the air between them, full of possibilities and complications, too numerous to contemplate in the fleeting moments they had left. I have to go, Nadim said regretfully, glancing at his watch. Alexander will have a diplomatic incident if I delay any longer. How will I? Emma started to ask, but Nadim was already pressing an envelope into her hands. Everything you need to know is in here, he said. The decision is entirely yours. I won't contact you before then. You deserve the space to choose freely without pressure. He leaned forward, hesitating just a breath away from her lips. May I? He whispered. In answer, Emma closed the distance between them, her lips meeting, his in a kiss that contained all the words they didn't have time to say. It was both a promise and a question, deep with longing and tinged with the bittersweet knowledge of their imminent separation. When they finally parted, Nadim rested his forehead against hers for a brief moment. 2 months, he murmured. Geneva. Then he was gone, the door closing quietly behind him, leaving Emma alone in the cafe with an envelope in her hands and a decision that would change the course of her life, no matter what she chose. The International Coffee Growers Summit in Geneva was everything Emma had imagined and more. The massive convention center bustled with representatives from over 60 countries, the air fragrant with samples of the world's finest coffee varieties. Elaborate booths showcased innovative brewing methods, sustainable farming practices, and direct trade initiatives, all the elements Emma had dreamed of incorporating into Mountain Brew's future. I still can't believe we're actually here, Lily said, wide-eyed as they made their way through the crowded exhibition hall. Emma had asked her friend to accompany her as Mountain Brew's assistant manager. Using part of the surprisingly generous coffee education grant that had mysteriously appeared in the cafe's business account 3 weeks after Nadim's departure. "Neither can I," Emma admitted, clutching her official attendee badge as if it might dissolve into mist at any moment. The 2 months since Nadim had left Pinecrest had passed in a blur of preparation. Emma had spent countless nights researching coffee origins, studying sustainable practices, and reaching out to potential suppliers. She had left the cafe in the capable hands of her newly hired manager, another unexpected development made possible by the mysterious grant. Despite her excitement about the summit, Emma couldn't deny the real reason her heart raced as she scanned the crowds. Would he come? Had anything changed in 2 months? The questions had plagued her since she'd made the decision to accept his implicit invitation. She had nearly convinced herself that the entire experience, the handsome prince, in disguise finding refuge in her small-town cafe, had been a fever dream. But then she would catch a glimpse of the business card tucked into her wallet, embossed with the royal seal of Jauhara and a private number that she had been too uncertain to call. According to the program, there's a panel on ethical sourcing. Practices starting in 15 minutes, Lily said, consulting the summit schedule. We should grab seats if we want to. She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening as she stared at something over Emma's shoulder. "Oh my God!" Emma turned, her breath catching in her throat. Across the hall, surrounded by an entourage of aides and security personnel, stood Nadim. Gone was Nathan Reed's casual attire, replaced by an impeccably tailored dark suit with subtle, gold cufflinks that caught the light as he gestured while speaking to a group of attentive officials. His beard was trimmed to precision, his posture regal and commanding, every inch the crown prince of Jauhara. As if sensing her gaze, Nadim glanced in her direction. For a heart-stopping moment, their eyes met across the crowded hall. A flash of recognition crossed his features, followed by something softer, more intimate. The ghost of Nathan Reed emerging briefly from behind the princely facade. Then Alexander leaned in to whisper something in his ear, and Nadim reluctantly returned his attention to the officials surrounding him. "That's him, isn't it?" Lily whispered, gripping Emma's arm. "The real him." "Holy hell, Emma, he really is a prince." "He really is," Emma murmured, unexpected emotions swirling through her. Longing mingled with intimidation as the full reality of Nadim's position sank in. In Pinecrest, it had been possible to forget who he truly was. Here, with the trappings of his royal status on full display, the gulf between their worlds seemed impossibly vast. "What are you going to do?" Lily asked. Before Emma could answer, a distinguished woman in a tailored pantsuit approached them. "Ms. Thompson?" she inquired politely. "I'm Catherine Davies, Royal Protocol Officer for the Jauharan delegation. His Highness has requested your presence at the VIP reception this evening. This is for you." She handed Emma an elegant cream-colored envelope. "Thank you," Emma managed to say, taken aback by the formality of the invitation. "A car will be sent. At your hotel at 7 o'clock, Catherine continued, her expression professionally neutral. Business formal attire is appropriate for the event. As the woman departed, Lily let out a low whistle. "Business formal? The nicest thing you packed is that black wrap dress from your cousin's wedding." "I know," Emma groaned, the confidence she'd cultivated during her preparation for the summit, rapidly evaporating. "What am I doing here, Lily? This isn't my world." "Hey," Lily said firmly, gripping Emma's shoulders, "you belong at this summit as much as anyone. You're a legitimate cafe owner with big dreams and serious questions. As for the prince thing," she shrugged, "he sought you out in Pinecrest. He's seeking you out again now. Maybe stop overthinking and just see what happens." The VIP reception was held in the historic Palais Wilson, overlooking Lake Geneva. Its neoclassical architecture and crystal chandeliers creating an atmosphere of old-world elegance. Emma stepped from the sleek town car in her simple black dress, feeling woefully underdressed, despite Lily's reassurances that she looked absolutely stunning. Inside, the grand hall buzzed with multilingual conversation as delegates from around the world mingled over champagne and canapes. Emma accepted a flute of champagne from a passing waiter, using it as a prop to steady her nerves as she scanned the crowd. "Miss Thompson." Alexander's voice came from behind her, causing her to turn sharply. Nadim's chief of staff regarded her with analytical interest. "I'm pleased you could attend." "Thank you for the invitation," Emma replied, striving for composure. "It's a beautiful venue." "Indeed." Alexander studied her for a long moment. "His Highness will be pleased that you came." He was not himself after returning from America. Emma wasn't sure how to respond to that oblique comment. "The summit has been very informative so far," she offered neutrally. Alexander's lips quirked in what might have been amusement. "I'm sure coffee education was a significant motivation for your journey across the Atlantic." Before Emma could formulate a suitably diplomatic response, he continued, "His Highness is currently engaged with the Swiss Trade Minister, but he asked me to escort you to the terrace in 20 minutes. Would that be acceptable?" Heart-pounding, Emma nodded. "Yes, that would be fine." The 20 minutes stretched interminably as Emma made awkward small talk with other attendees, half her mind constantly aware of the ornate clock on the wall. When the time finally arrived, Alexander appeared at her elbow and silently guided her through the crowd toward a set of French doors leading to the terrace. The night air was cool and crisp, the terrace illuminated by subtle lighting that highlighted the historic balustrades, while providing breathtaking views of the lake and the famous jet d'eau fountain, illuminated against the night sky. At the far end, a solitary figure stood with his back to her, hands clasped behind him as he gazed out over the water. "Your Highness," Alexander announced formally, "Ms. Emma Thompson." Nadim turned, and Emma's breath caught. He was resplendent in a dark suit with subtle traditional embellishments that marked his royal status without being ostentatious. Yet beneath the polished exterior, his eyes were the same, warm, intense, seeing her with a clarity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and understood. "Thank you, Alexander," Nadim said, his gaze never leaving Emma's face. "That will be all for now." With a respectful nod, Alexander withdrew, closing the terrace doors behind him. For a moment, they simply stood silently, taking in the sight of each other after 2 months apart. "You came," Nadim said finally, his voice softer than it had been when addressing Alexander, more reminiscent of the man who had helped wash dishes in her cafe. "I came," Emma confirmed, maintaining a careful distance between them, though I'm still not entirely sure why. "Because you're curious," Nadim suggested, taking a step closer. "Because despite everything, there's something here worth exploring." Another step. Or perhaps because, like me, you haven't been able to stop thinking about those kisses we shared. Emma felt her cheeks warm. The summit offered valuable networking opportunities, she deflected, though the slight tremor in her voice betrayed her. "Of course," Nadim agreed, the hint of a smile playing at his lips. "The coffee education grant worked as intended then." "That was you," Emma said, though it wasn't really a question. "The grant, the connections that got us invited to the summit." "Guilty," Nadim admitted, "though I assure you, Mountain Brew's credentials stand on their own merit. I merely facilitated certain introductions." "Why?" Emma asked, the question encompassing far more than just the grant. Nadim seemed to understand the broader inquiry. He moved to the balustrade, gesturing for her to join him. When she did, they stood side by side, looking out over the glimmering waters of Lake Geneva. "In the 2 months since I left Pinecrest," he began, his voice thoughtful, "I've attended 14 diplomatic receptions, negotiated 3 trade agreements, represented my father at a UN assembly, and spent countless hours being briefed on matters of state." He turned to look at her directly. "And in every spare moment my thoughts returned to a small cafe in the mountains, where for a brief time I was just a man learning to make coffee." "Nathan Reed was an illusion," Emma said softly, voicing the doubt that had plagued her since his departure. "No," Nadim countered firmly. "Nathan Reed was the truest version of myself I've ever been allowed to be, without the weight of the crown, without the expectations of an entire nation. Just a man discovering simple joys, making genuine connections." His gaze intensified. "Finding someone who saw me, not my title." "And now?" Emma gestured to the opulent setting around them. "This is your reality, Nadim. Palaces and protocol officers and security details, not small-town cafes and harvest festivals. You're right, Nadim acknowledged, surprising her with his candor. This is my reality, a reality I cannot escape, nor would I wish to. My responsibilities to Jauhara are sacred to me. I was born to serve my people, and I will fulfill that duty with everything I am. Emma nodded, a lump forming in her throat. She had known this from the beginning, yet hearing him say it aloud still stung. But, Nadim continued, reaching for her hand, which she allowed him to take, I've learned something important in these past months. To be the leader my country needs, I must also be true to myself. And the self I discovered in Pinecrest, the man who washed dishes and danced under festival lights and kissed you in the moonlight, he is as real as the Crown Prince standing before you now. What are you saying? Emma asked, afraid to hope. I'm saying that I want both, Nadim said simply. I want to honor my duty to my country and my heritage, and I want the woman who makes me feel like I'm more than just my title. That sounds impossible, Emma whispered, though her heart raced at his words. Difficult, certainly, Nadim agreed. Unconventional, absolutely, but not impossible. He squeezed her hand gently. Unless you've decided I'm not worth the trouble after all. The echo of their conversation from the festival night hung between them, charged with new meaning. How would it even work? Emma asked, allowing herself to consider the possibility for the first time. I have a business, a life in Pinecrest. You have a kingdom waiting for you. Jauhara is actually investing heavily in sustainable coffee. Farming, Nadim replied, a spark of excitement entering his voice. We're establishing a specialty coffee industry as part of our economic diversification plan. We need experienced consultants who understand both the craft and business aspects. He paused, gauging her reaction. Someone like you could make regular extended visits in a professional capacity, helping to train our emerging baristas, advising on quality control. You've thought this through, Emma realized, both touched and overwhelmed. I've had 2 months to consider every possibility, Nadim admitted. But I want to be clear, this isn't just about finding excuses to see you, though that's certainly a benefit. Your expertise is genuinely valuable to our initiative. His expression grew serious. I would never ask you to abandon your grandmother's legacy. Mountain Brew is your heart, and I respect that. But perhaps that heart could expand to include new horizons? Emma looked out over the lake, the lights of Geneva twinkling like earthbound stars. The enormity of what Nadim was suggesting washed over her. Not just a relationship, but a partnership that spanned continents, that would potentially reshape both their lives. I need to know one thing, she said finally, turning to face him fully. In Pinecrest, when you were just Nathan to me, was any of it real? Or was I just a charming diversion, an escape from your responsibilities? Nadim's response was to gently frame her face with his hands, his touch reverent. Emma Thompson, he said, his voice low and fervent, meeting you was the most real thing that has ever happened to me. Everything else, the crown, the protocol, the politics, sometimes feels like the performance. You are the truth I never expected to find. Before she could respond, the terrace doors opened and Alexander appeared, looking apologetic. Your Highness, forgive the interruption, but the Prime Minister of Kenya is requesting a moment of your time. Nadim closed his eyes briefly, the mantle of duty settling visibly on his shoulders. Tell him I'll be there momentarily, Alexander. As Alexander withdrew again, Nadim turned back to Emma with a rueful smile. This is what it would be like, he said honestly. Interrupted moments, competing priorities, 2 worlds constantly colliding. Emma took a deep breath, reaching a decision that felt both terrifying and absolutely right. Then I suppose we'll need to get better at finding balance, she said, stepping closer to him. Hope bloomed in Nadim's eyes. Does that mean... It means I'm willing to try, Emma clarified, her practical nature asserting itself even as her heart soared. No promises beyond that. We see how the coffee consulting arrangement works. We take things one step at a time and we're honest with each other about the challenges. I can work with that, Nadim agreed. A genuine smile, Nathan Reed's smile, breaking through the princely composure. Starting with this moment of honesty. I very much want to kiss you right now." Emma glanced toward the doors, beyond which waited diplomats, officials, and all the complexities of Nadim's royal life. "Won't that cause some kind of international incident?" "Probably," Nadim admitted, his smile turning mischievous as he pulled her closer. "But some things are worth the diplomatic fallout." As their lips met beneath the Swiss stars, Emma realized that her grandmother had been right all along. Coffee truly could build bridges between cultures. What she couldn't have predicted was that it would also bridge the gap between a small-town cafe owner and a crown prince, creating a connection that defied convention and transcended borders. 6 months later, Mountain Brew had expanded to include a modest roastery specializing in ethically sourced beans from Johara's emerging coffee farms. Emma divided her time between Pinecrest and the Gulf Nation, where she advised the Royal Coffee Initiative and gradually learned the complex protocols of palace life. It wasn't always easy. Cultural differences, public scrutiny, and the demands of Nadim's position created obstacles that sometimes seemed insurmountable. There were tearful video calls across time zones, frustrating misunderstandings, and moments when both questioned whether their unconventional relationship could withstand the pressures placed upon it. But there were also moonlit walks through palace gardens, where Nadim would shed the formality of his position and become once again the man who had washed dishes in her cafe. There were quiet mornings in Emma's apartment above Mountain Brew, where a crown prince learned to make pancakes and brew the perfect pour-over. There were stolen moments of normalcy amidst the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together. On the 1-year anniversary of their first meeting, Nadim returned to Pinecrest incognito, slipping into Mountain Brew just before closing time. Emma looked up from wiping down the counter to find him standing in the doorway, dressed in the same casual clothes he had worn during his time as Nathan Reed. "We've come full circle," she observed with a smile, crossing the room to welcome him with a kiss. "Not quite," Nadim replied, taking her hands in his. "A year ago, I walked in here looking for an escape. Now I'm here because I've finally found something worth holding on to." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "No matter what challenges lie ahead, no matter how many worlds we have to bridge." As he knelt on the worn wooden floor of the cafe where their story had begun, Emma realized that some love stories weren't meant to follow conventional paths. Sometimes, the most extraordinary connections happened in the most ordinary places, like a small-town coffee shop where a prince had once hidden, only to discover that the greatest adventure of all was finding the courage to be his true self. "Emma Thompson," Nadim said, opening the box to reveal a ring that somehow managed to be both elegantly regal and perfectly suited to her practical nature. "Will you continue this journey with me, whatever unexpected turns it might take?" Emma's answer was as simple and true as the love that had blossomed between them against all odds. "Yes." Fimda Historia. Dear listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this journey through the unexpected romance between Emma and Nadim. Like a perfectly brewed cup of coffee, some stories warm the soul and leave a lasting impression. If you've been touched by their adventure across worlds, we've created a special playlist of equally captivating tales that explore the complexities of love against impossible odds. Find it by clicking the link to your left. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up if Emma and Nadim's story resonated with you. Every day, we bring you unique narratives that explore the depth of human connection,